The latest inflation figures were out this morning, and they show that although the rate has eased slightly, prices are still continuing to rise at nearly their fastest rate in 40 years. If you can remember back to last Thursday, before the news of the Queen's death, the Prime Minister Liz Truss stood up in the House of Commons to deliver her much anticipated plans for soaring energy bills faced by households and businesses. It was announced that energy bills would be freezed at an average of £2,500 a year for 2 years. Today, we are discussing something else mentioned in that speech: fracking. The Prime Minister announced that the ban on fracking will be lifted to help boost the UK's domestic gas supplies. Just to remind you, fracking is a method of extracting shale gas. It involves drilling into the earth and directing a high-pressure mixture at a rock layer in order to release the gas inside. And one group that's been campaigning against fracking call themselves the Nanas. Tina Rothery is co-founder of UK Nanas and joins me now. Thank you for your time, Tina. The Prime Minister has said that these new sites should only go ahead with local consent. And she's argued that the UK is too dependent on international energy supplies, especially in light of that war in Ukraine at the moment. What do you make of these plans?
I think that having fought this since 2011, we can't understand in the anti-fracking community how it is that anything has changed other than the political circumstances. Certainly the safety of the process and the suitability with UK geology is just not changed at all. So in the manifesto in 2019, the Conservative government said that they would not allow fracking to resume unless it was proved safe. But nothing has changed to prove it's safe. All that's happened is that the war in Ukraine has changed the dialogue about it. But certainly for the residents that I know throughout the country who have stood strong against having this in their communities, nothing for us has changed to make us feel reassured that this is a safe process that won't harm our children or our environment.
And you have been supporting these residents. Tell us about the work of the Nanas.
I think when we came to this, we were, just disparate people trying to stop something scary coming to our community that was, after research, proving to be problematic in Australia and America and Canada and other places where it was already taking place. We watched it unfold in Poland as communities went out and got their ban. And we looked into it a lot further, and then we decided we'd probably be a lot more effective as a group. So I think it's really difficult. When you look at activism, it's not a natural life choice. It's certainly not a choice to walk into something that's so awful and demanding, and it puts you in a conflict situation a great deal, and it's a situation where you're attacked in media, or your neighbors don't necessarily like it. It's a really hard thing to do. I think maybe more so for the women that I met who perhaps didn't know how to be activists. So we created the Nanas as a title to make it clear it isn't because we were just environmentalists or activists or hippies. It was because we were grandparents and mothers and aunts, and it was a familial thing. It was because we wanted to protect our young. And there was an article in Rolling Stone that came out about Utah midwives and the increased number of early term loss in pregnancy for women living near fracking sites, and that was noted by the increased number of graves. And I remember being really heartbroken about that for them. And that the midwives were silenced, pretty much gagging orders until there was evidence. And then in the area also, young racehorses were being born and they had misaligned jaws. And then that became news because a racehorse is of value, whereas the children that were being lost weren't. So there's a great deal of emotional reasons to be against fracking, but there's a lot more that are reasons that have been proved scientifically and stated clearly by so many scientists that this is just not suitable, and particularly in the UK. The UK geology is so prone to seismicity around fracking sites. Like when they did it here in Lancashire, there were 57 minor seismic tremors that then culminated in a 2.9 earthquake. And the cutoff point for that is if it reaches a 0.5 whilst they're drilling, they're supposed to stop drilling, and they do. Yeah. But it still reached 2.9 because even though you stop drilling, the tremor continues.
I can hear your concern. I can hear that you are well versed in the environmental concerns related to this. But in my opening question, I said that the PM said that these new sites would not go ahead unless there was local consent. Does that reassure you in any way?
I think what they mean is local desperation due to high fuel costs. This is not people reaching out and going, you know what, this is going to be great for us. This is people being told, we'll give you a reduction in your energy bills if you live nearby. And that's tantalizing. And a place particularly here like Lancashire in Blackpool is one of a place just riddled with poverty and food banks. And so dangling that carrot is just a cruelty. It's a cruelty. It's asking us to take something dangerous.
And industrial strategy for comment. And they haven't given us a statement, but they have pointed us to the speech that Liz Truss gave in the Commons last Thursday, in which she says, we will end the moratorium on extracting our huge reserves of shale, which could get gas flowing as soon as 6 months from now, where there is local support for it. We will launch the Great British Nuclear this month, putting us on a path to deliver a quarter of our electricity generation with nuclear energy by 2050. What do you say to that?
For a start, we disagreed with this process since 2011. And certainly here again in Lancashire in 2017 in January, we did 1,000 days of protest up until the moratorium in November 2019. During that time, they literally got a sniff of gas out of the ground, not enough to power a 3-bed semi. The fact that she imagines that after a decade of fracking companies trying, that they're going to have this flowing in 6 months. I really don't understand where that figure comes from. We're currently awaiting a report that was brought out in April into fracking, commissioned by the government. And the government's been holding that since before summer recess. And we're looking forward to finding out what's in that. Previously, when Liz Truss was in the Environment Department back in 2014-15, there was another report put out by the Geological Society that said that we couldn't get access to, and we had to demand it by law. Eventually, she released a heavily redacted report, and then finally got that unredacted. And it said there was risk to life. Well, they don't call it life. They call us receptors. We're in the same category, residents, as grade 2 listed buildings. So receptors could be impacted. So I don't understand where she's getting any of the figures or ideas from that she has. So until we see that report, or what it is she's basing her words on.
Well, obviously there are various organisations who are continuing to carry out research on fracking. Some will say it provides an alternative to coal because there is a reliance on natural gas rather than coal is. So it's a move away from coal. Others will say that burning natural gas does create pollution. It doesn't produce pollutants such as ash and mercury. But there is a wider concern from ordinary folk who aren't as well versed in what is happening in the fine environmental details of fracking, who simply say we are facing a cost of living crisis here. We need a secure, reliable, low-cost energy supply in the current climate, especially, as I said, in light of the war in Ukraine. If this is an option, should we not work towards making it work for us in a safe way?
Choosing that option would be a knee-jerk reaction to fear. You know, we should have been, for a very long time, reducing our energy use and putting in insulation and, developing those wind farms and solar. And to say that this will come online and do anything for our bills, there's two things to consider there. One, it can take anything up to 10 years to start getting gas from a site that you're developing. And two, the gas is not British gas for British use. This gas, when it's produced, certainly here, Quadrilla, the company that would be developing in Lancashire, is an Australian-owned, partly Australian-owned, with Chinese loan money and an American investor. And that is not for UK use. It goes onto the international market and is sold at the highest price they can get for it. And it is not something that is for us. And that whole discourse of saying, but you need this because it will bring your bills down, is an outright lie.
Okay, but putting aside the bills, what about job creation? Because there is that argument that fracking, at least in the United States, it's triggered a revolution, a shale gas revolution when it comes to job creation. again, in the current climate, is that not something that communities like your own would benefit from?
There was a report, and I'm trying to remember it, but when they assessed that, they said it's approximately, as soon as you've developed the site, which takes about 6 weeks to actually put the site into process, and then once you've managed to get the fracking going, eventually you only require security staff on site. The highly skilled people who come in and do site build, site development, and actually put in place the fracturing of the shale. Then from that point onwards, you're still looking at roughly 10 years till you're getting a decent amount of gas. So it's not immediate, it's not straight away. And
that has been agreed, that this whole process will take time. My final question to you, Tina. My final question to you, what will it take for you to come on board with an increase in fracking in the United Kingdom?
I gave evidence in the House of Lords in 2012 about this, and Lord Lawson asked that question. And I asked him to picture the fact that my grandchild is standing behind me and the fracking industry is coming at me. What it's going to take to move me out of the way and let this dangerous industry come at her? Absolutely nothing. People say, well, what if you don't win? Well, there isn't that point for us. Certainly as nanas, we're already, crowdfunding for, what comes next, because there is no end to this until it ends. You can't just stop fighting and say, it's okay. I'm going to unknow all of those facts I know and let you do this, because that would just be impossible, I think, for any grandma.
Tina Rothery, co-founder of the UK Nanas, thank you for joining us.